Will the Wheel of Time be the next Game of Thrones? Now, if you're not a fantasy book fan and you don't know what the Wheel of Time is, that's fine. I was in the same boat like a year ago. The Wheel of Time series, written by Robert Jordan and later Brandon Sanderson, contains 14 books, each about 1,000 pages long, give or take. With the series now finished, it's about time that the story finally receives the adaptation that fantasy fans have been waiting for. And of course, after the dumpster fire that was Season 8, millions of people are looking to scratch that itch that only Game of Thrones could scratch. So, will the Wheel of Time be the one to scratch that itch? To answer that question, we need to look at what made Game of Thrones so successful. The sheer scale of popularity that the show acquired is incredibly impressive due to the fact that it comes from a book series with a pretty niche audience. A large audience, but still niche. But Game of Thrones did something different. This wasn't your normal Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy adventure. It broke boundaries. Now, of course, there's the obvious violence and nudity that are especially reasons why it drew the eyes of outsiders, and those might be the reasons why people came, but surely it's not the only reasons they stayed. It goes without saying that up until maybe season 5 to 7-ish, the show was incredibly well written. But more specifically, the audience had a wide variety of different characters to latch onto, each living in a diverse world with different goals and motivations in mind. Because there was no main character who was objectively the person to be rooting for, the show sparked dialogue between fans. Like, which character was more fit for the throne? Which would die? What house are you? And, especially later, why did they do that? With a show that is so easy to talk and debate about, word-of-mouth marketing might very well be what made millions of people try a show that they probably had no intention of ever trying. Of course, I'm sure after a certain point the show was just so big that people tried it just because of FOMO. So what about Wheel of Time? What should be expected of it? Well, Amazon is desperately trying to fill the hole made by Game of Thrones after all, trying to catch lightning in a bottle.
You don't have the ball.
Amazon has acquired the rights to make their own adaptations of The Lord of the Rings, the Dark Tower series, and, of course, The Wheel of Time. Now, as I say this, the first season actually hasn't finished yet, so keep that in mind. Either way, I think I have a pretty good idea of what the answer to the title question is. But first, let me say this. The Wheel of Time, so far, from what I've seen, is a pretty good show. I haven't read the books, but it seems like it's doing a good job at being an adaptation.
What is it?
McDonald's Chicken McNuggets.
And the critical and audience reviews for the show are, at the very least, decent. Good, but not great. So far, this show doesn't have any of the ingredients that made Game of Thrones talk-worthy. If you're having lunch with a friend, you guys aren't going to be sitting there debating for hours about which characters are going to come out on top of what is basically a political board game, with some extra blood and incest. You're going to be like, so have you watched that, Wheel of Time yet? Yeah, I saw the first couple episodes. It was good. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. The main source of this problem is that the Wheel of Time was originally very inspired by Lord of the Rings, which is great, but it's familiar territory. It doesn't match up to Game of Thrones literally killing one of the main characters at the end of the first season. So far, there's nothing necessarily shocking or new about the show. In fact, compared to Game of Thrones, it seems almost PG-13. So, will the Wheel of Time be the next Game of Thrones? No. Probably not. But that's okay. It doesn't need to be. Both shows, while under the same genre, approach fantasy in different ways. They scratch different itches. Even if Wheel of Time doesn't become something like Game of Thrones, which became a household name and was talked about by everyone for basically a decade straight, that's fine. It's doing just fine so far, with a solid fan base that, no matter the speed, is growing. And that's going to be enough for it to come back for a second season. They just need to keep that up for the rest of the show, and at the very least, we'll have something great to watch. No pressure. But hey, don't let me stop you from going to war for your favorite fantasy show. People will argue for years about which one is better, but that's just the internet. It's inevitable. And that about does it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have anything that you'd like to see a video about, go ahead and write it in the comments. Thanks for watching. That'll be it for me.